records, blah, blah, blah. But she did discover that indeed her Irish blood was confirmed, and
Okay.
her percentages said that her grandmother, her great grandmother, was actually fully Irish, not just mulatto or biracial or mixed heritage with a little bit of black, enough black to marry a Jamaican man, but she was like actually Irish. Um, and so she was proud of that. But then what she saw the most of was that she had a lot of Nigerian blood.
Oh, okay.
And suddenly she had pride, in the continent, like, this connection to the motherland.
Yes.
And I remember looking at her, so funny, because she was bragging about how these Nigerian genes had made her mother such an amazing braider. And I was like, used to hate the fact that your mother braided and that she wore braids and that she, wanted to, braid your hair and all this stuff. Like, but she just all of a sudden, like, knowing where she came from gave her pride
Yeah.
in that. And so I was like, well, that's cool, because
Yeah.
I don't think she even recognized the shift in herself. But I did. I mean, I'm a braider, obviously. She never told me that I couldn't. She never gave me a hard time about it, but I knew that it was a sticking point. It was just
Yeah.
one thing of many. I guess it's easier to be mad at your mom about wearing braids in the US in the 60s, when black people weren't allowed to wear their hair how it is, without a lot of backlash, right?
Yes.
And so, your success could be tied to it. And so she just felt like those were things that her mother did that contributed to her not having the kind of success she would have liked to have seen. So all that goes there. Now, meanwhile, in North Carolina, there's a woman who had recently lost her mother, and in dealing with her mother's affairs, one of the things that she was managing was her mother's DNA profile
Okay.
at a different company, right? Just looking at the family tree, building it, doing the research, plugging in all the names of all these aunts and uncles and cousins and all of that. And the company that they used had this promotion where they let you access the records of other companies. In other words, they
Okay.
all threw it all in, and everybody was able to see everybody else's records.
So somehow they intertwined
Right.
eventually.
And
Okay.
so in losing her mother, her reaching into her history and heritage and genetic legacy was one of the ways that she was comforting herself. And lo and behold, one of the people that matched their genes was my mother. So my mom, all the way here in California, gets this email from her DNA company that says, hey, we found a match. You have a direct relative. Well, my mom's like, oh, well, that's interesting. Maybe they finally gave me my kids.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Right, on DNA. So she opens the message, and there in black and white letters, something she's never seen before in her life, was her father's name.
Oh.
And her father was John Williams, which is a very common name, but his middle name was Marion.
Okay.
And how many men named Marion?
Right. That's different.
So she knew for sure it was her dad, and she about lost consciousness, right? But she decided to go ahead and email the person whose account it was, right? Which was her niece, not knowing that her niece had recently passed away.
Oh,
And so it
okay.
was her great niece, this other woman who was grieving the loss of her mother, that received the message. And they connected and they called, and sure enough, this was my mother's great niece by the granddaughter of my mom's sister, that she never knew, that her mother didn't allow to connect to her or anything like that. And so all of a sudden, mom has this huge family where she is the matriarch, like literally like 80 people who know who they are, who know who she is.
Yeah.
And she looks so much like this niece of hers that had just passed away. So they're blown away. She's blown away.
Yeah.
My cousin jumps on a plane. She and I are closer to the same age because our mothers were 20 years apart.
Okay.
Right? Well, her grandmother and my mother were 20 years apart. So we're closer in age, and my mom is actually close in age to a lot of her nieces and nephews because, again, you know, she was young enough to be her